In the dense, misty forests of Olympic National Park, legendary canine handler ranger Maya Reeves faces a career-defining challenge. After successfully training over 30 search and rescue dogs throughout her 15-year career, she's finally met her match in Phantom, a powerful coal-black Belgian Malinois with extraordinary abilities and an equally extraordinary stubborn streak. After months of failed training attempts and mounting pressure from park administration, Maya makes a reckless declaration that nobody, absolutely nobody, can gain this exceptional animal's trust and cooperation. What happens next will shake the tight-knit ranger community to its core and remind everyone that sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn painted the ancient evergreens in hues of gold and amber, as Ranger Maya Reeves trudged along the muddy training grounds behind the Olympic National Park headquarters. Her weathered ranger hat cast a shadow across deep-set eyes that had witnessed countless wilderness rescues, her face etched with lines that spoke of years spent in all extremes of weather. At 42, she'd earned every bit of her reputation as the finest canine handler in the Pacific Northwest. 20 yards ahead, a powerful black Belgian Malinois named Phantom raced through the training course, effortlessly clearing 6-foot obstacles and navigating complex terrain. His midnight coat gleamed with health, muscles rippling beneath as he moved with unnatural grace and speed. Any observer would marvel at such a magnificent animal until they noticed he was completely ignoring every command Maya shouted. "Phantom, halt!" she called firmly, her voice carrying through the morning. Missed. The dog glanced back, intelligent eyes meeting hers, with what could only be described as defiance before continuing his self-directed course through the training yard. Senior Ranger Jack Wilson leaned against the fence, watching with poorly concealed amusement. His salt-and-pepper beard couldn't hide the smirk forming at the corners of his mouth. "Still having communication issues with our superstar, I see." Maya shot him a glare that would have intimidated most colleagues. Jack, however, had known her for over a decade, long enough to recognize the frustration beneath her professional composure. "He's the most naturally gifted search dog I've ever encountered," she admitted, clipping a lead to her belt. "His scent detection abilities are off the charts. He can track trails 3 days cold in pouring rain, but his selective hearing—" She shook her head, whistling sharply. Again, Phantom acknowledged the sound before deliberately continuing his independent exploration. "Never seen anything like it," Jack agreed, "almost like he knows how good he is and has decided to be a consultant rather than an employee." Several other rangers gathered along the fence, drawn by the uncommon sight of Maya Reeves, whose perfectly trained canine partners had located over 200 missing hikers throughout her career, struggling with basic obedience. Training sessions had become something of a spectator sport over the past 3 months, since Phantom had arrived from the specialized breeding program. "Regional directors asking about progress again," Jack mentioned casually, though his tone conveyed the seriousness behind the inquiry. "Wants to know if the $30,000 they invested in our wonder dog is going to pay off." Maya's jaw tightened. The pressure had been building weekly. Olympic National Park covered nearly 1 million acres of wilderness, from coastal rainforests to alpine meadows and rugged mountains. Every year, dozens of hikers went missing in its vast expanse. A properly trained search and rescue dog wasn't just an asset, it was often the difference between life and death for lost visitors. "He'll be ready," she insisted, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "He just needs more time." 3 months is already pushing it, Jack reminded her. "Standard protocol says we should have reassigned him after the first 6 weeks of non-compliance." Maya knew this better than anyone. She'd written half the canine training protocols herself, but something about Phantom was different. His intelligence, his abilities, his seemingly deliberate resistance to traditional training methods. She couldn't bring herself to give up on him. "Give me another month," she said firmly. "I'm trying a new approach." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Another one? Maya, you've tried everything in the book and invented some new chapters along the way." She opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the arrival of Deputy Director Harmon Pierce, his polished SUV creating a stark contrast to the mud-splattered ranger vehicles. His pressed uniform and meticulously groomed appearance always seemed oddly out of place in the backcountry headquarters. He approached with the confident stride of someone more accustomed to boardrooms than wilderness. "Ranger Reeves," he called, navigating carefully around a puddle. "I was hoping to witness some progress today." Maya straightened instinctively. "Director Pierce, we're working through some advanced concepts." Pierce glanced pointedly at Phantom, who was now sprawled comfortably beneath a cedar tree, observing them with evident disinterest. "Indeed, very advanced. The regional office is concerned about the investment, Reeves. These specialized canines don't come cheap." "Phantom has exceptional abilities," she countered. "His scent detection scores are the highest we've ever recorded. He just has independent tendencies." "Independent?" Pierce scoffed. "From what I'm seeing and what I've heard, he's completely unresponsive to command. A search dog that doesn't follow direction isn't just useless, it's a liability." The gathering of rangers shifted uncomfortably. Maya felt heat rising in her face. 15 years of exemplary service, dozens of successful rescues, and her professional judgment was being questioned in front of the entire morning shift. "With all due respect, sir," she kept her voice measured, "traditional methods don't always—" "I'm not interested in excuses," Pierce cut her off. "The regional director is questioning whether our top handler has met her match or if the dog is simply untrainable. Either way, it doesn't reflect well on the program." Something snapped inside Maya. Every frustrating training session, every sleepless night spent researching alternative methods, every moment of connection with Phantom that dissolved into stubborn standoffs, it all crystallized into a moment of defiance that matched the dog's own. "Phantom isn't untrainable," she declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's exceptional. The standard approaches don't work because he's not a standard dog." Pierce's expression remained skeptical. "Results speak louder than theories. Ranger Reeves, and right now, the results are telling me we should cut our losses." Maya took a step forward, aware she was crossing a line but unable to stop herself. "I've trained 32 search and rescue dogs throughout my career. Dogs that have saved hundreds of lives. If I can't reach Phantom, nobody can." A heavy silence fell over the training yard. Even Jack looked surprised at her uncharacteristic outburst. Pierce studied her for a long moment. "Is that so?" he finally said, a calculated gleam entering his eyes. "You're that confident in your assessment." Maya should have recognized the warning in his tone, but frustration had clouded her judgment. "Absolutely. No one in this park, or any other, could succeed where I haven't with this dog." A thin smile spread across Pierce's face. "Then you won't mind if we put that theory to the test?" "What do you mean?" Maya asked, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. "You've just made a bold claim, Ranger Reeves. Let's turn it into a proper evaluation." Pierce turned to address the gathered. "Rangers, since our renowned handler believes no one can train this animal, let's open the challenge. 2 months until the annual ranger demonstration for the summer season. If anyone can get this dog to perform basic search and rescue commands reliably, they prove Maya Reeves wrong and potentially save a valuable program asset." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "That's not what I—" "And to ensure proper motivation," Pierce continued, ignoring her protest, "let's attach some stakes. If someone succeeds where you've failed, you'll step down as K9 program lead and accept reassignment to visitor services. Gasps and murmurs spread through the watching rangers. Visitor services was essential work, but would be a devastating demotion for someone of Maya's expertise and seniority. Jack stepped forward. "Director, that's completely out of line. Ranger, Reeves has an exemplary record, which makes her absolute certainty all the more interesting," Pierce countered smoothly. "Unless, of course, she's not actually confident in her assessment." Maya recognized the trap too late. If she backed down now, her credibility would be shattered. But accepting meant putting her entire career on the line because of one moment of pride. Phantom had risen from his resting place and now stood watching the confrontation with uncanny focus, his amber eyes fixed on Maya as if understanding exactly what was transpiring. "Fine," Maya heard herself say, the word escaping before she could reconsider. "But if no one succeeds, and they won't, then Phantom stays in the program under my direction, with no more questions or interference until I deem him ready." Pierce considered this, then nodded sharply. "Agreed. 2 months. Basic search and rescue protocol compliance from the dog or your alternative training methods get full authorization." He checked his polished watch. "I'll send out the official parameters this afternoon. May the best handler win." As he walked away, the gathered rangers dispersed in uncomfortable silence, whispers already beginning about the unprecedented challenge. Maya stood rooted to the spot, the full weight of what had just happened settling on her shoulders. Jack approached cautiously. "That was quite a show of confidence." "That was quite a show of stupidity," she corrected quietly. "I let him provoke me." "Pierce has been looking for ways to restructure the K9 program since he arrived." Jack acknowledged. "Cost-cutting disguised as efficiency improvements. This gives him the perfect opportunity." Maya glanced at Phantom, who had returned to his spot beneath the cedar tree, watching her with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. "Nobody else will succeed with him," she said, with less certainty than before. "He's not just stubborn, it's like he's waiting for something, some approach I haven't figured out yet." "Let's hope you're right," Jack replied grimly, "because visitor services would be a waste of your talents, and we both know it." By afternoon, the news had spread throughout Olympic National Park's ranger stations. Maya's challenge, now officially termed the Phantom Assessment, had transformed from a moment of frustration into a structured competition. Pierce's email outlined the parameters. Any park employee could attempt to work with Phantom, documenting their approaches and progress. Success would be measured by the dog's reliable performance of 5 critical search and rescue commands during an impartial evaluation at the summer demonstration. Maya sat in her cabin that evening, scrolling through responses that ranged from supportive messages from longtime colleagues to eager acceptances from younger rangers who saw an opportunity to prove themselves. Phantom lay on the rug nearby, seemingly unconcerned with the storm he had helped create. "You've really done it. This time," she told the dog, who flicked an ear in acknowledgement without bothering to lift his head. "Do you have any idea what's at stake here?" As if understanding perfectly, Phantom yawned dramatically before closing his eyes. The following weeks brought a parade of would-be trainers to the K9 facility. Experienced handlers from other districts, rangers with personal dog training backgrounds, even a visiting expert from another national park who happened to be attending a conference nearby. Each approached Phantom with confidence that quickly dissolved into confusion and eventually frustration. The powerful Malinois displayed the same pattern with everyone: initial curiosity, apparent understanding of commands, and then deliberate disregard. It was as if he comprehended exactly what was being asked, but chose not to comply out of some inscrutable principle. Maya observed each attempt with mixed emotions. Professional pride made her secretly relieved at every failure, while her concern for Phantom's future created genuine hope for breakthrough. The contradiction left her perpetually on edge. "He's playing with them," Jack remarked one afternoon, watching as a ranger with 20 years of hunting dog experience walked away shaking his head. "He shows just enough potential to keep them trying, then shuts down." Maya had noticed the same pattern. It's not defiance in the traditional sense. When most dogs resist training, there's confusion or fear. With Phantom, it's like he's testing them. Testing for what? "That's what I still haven't figured out," she admitted. 6 weeks into the challenge, the initial enthusiasm had waned. Fewer rangers signed up for training slots, and Pierce's visits became less frequent as the lack of progress suggested Maya's assessment might be correct after all. She should have felt vindicated, but instead found herself increasingly troubled. If no one could reach Phantom, including her, what future awaited such a valuable yet unusable resource? The answer arrived unexpectedly on a rain-soaked Tuesday in late May. Maya was completing paperwork in the ranger station when the door swung open, bringing a gust of damp air and 2 unexpected visitors. Senior Ranger Daniel Morgan stepped inside, shaking water from his rain gear. Behind him stood a girl of about 10, thin and solemn-faced, with dark hair plastered to her head from the downpour. Her oversized rain jacket suggested it had been borrowed at the last minute. "Maya," Daniel nodded in greeting. "Got someone here who's been asking about the K9 program. This is Sophie Lawson. Her Aunt Claire works in administration." Maya offered a professional smile, despite her confusion. The K9 facility wasn't typically open for casual visits, especially from children. "Hello, Sophie. I'm Ranger Reeves." The girl didn't return the smile. Her eyes, startlingly intense for someone so young, met Maya's directly. "I heard about Phantom," she said simply. "The dog nobody can train." "Word travels fast," Maya commented, glancing questioningly at Daniel. He shrugged apologetically. "Claire's been bringing her to work since—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "Since the accident. School's out for a teacher training day, and Sophie overheard some rangers talking about the challenge." Something in his tone made Maya look more closely at the child. Beyond the soaked appearance and serious expression, she noticed signs she'd missed initially. The careful way the girl held herself, the shadow of grief that seemed too heavy for her small frame. "What accident?" Maya asked quietly. "Parents," Daniel murmured. "Avalanche on Mount Rainier 3 months ago. She's living with her aunt now. Hasn't said much since it happened, according to Claire. This is the first thing she's shown interest in." Understanding dawned, along with a wave of sympathy. Maya knew too well how trauma could reshape a person. Her own path to ranger service had begun with a wilderness tragedy and rescue that had redirected her entire life. She crouched to meet Sophie at eye level. "Phantom is a very special dog," she explained gently. "He has amazing abilities, but he's having trouble with his training. Can I see him?" The question came without preamble or politeness, just direct purpose that seemed incongruous from a child so young. Maya hesitated. The K9 facility wasn't a petting zoo, and Phantom wasn't a typical dog. But something in the girl's unwavering gaze made refusal difficult. "He's not always friendly with strangers," she cautioned. "I'm good with dogs," Sophie stated with quiet certainty. "My parents were mountain guides. We had rescue dogs too." Maya exchanged glances with Daniel, who nodded slightly. 20 minutes, she decided. "But you'll need to follow my instructions exactly. Phantom isn't like other dogs you might have known." For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed Sophie's face. Not quite a smile, but a momentary softening. "No good dog is like any other," she said in what sounded like a quoted phrase, perhaps something her parents had once told her. The rain had eased to a gentle mist as Maya led Sophie to the canine facility. Daniel had returned to his duties after Maya assured him she'd call Claire when they finished. As they walked, Maya found herself studying the girl's profile, recognizing the contained grief in her careful movements. It reminded her of injured animals, conserving energy, protecting vulnerable places. Phantom came to us from a special breeding program, Maya explained as they approached the facility. Belgian Malinois are known for their work ethic and intelligence, but he's exceptional even for the breed. His scent detection, physical capabilities, and problem-solving skills are off the charts. Sophie absorbed this information silently, her attention focused on the building ahead. The challenge, Maya continued, feeling oddly compelled to fill the silence, started because I said no one could train him if I couldn't. It was a moment of frustration, but now people are trying to prove me wrong. Maybe you're all doing it wrong, Sophie said simply, without looking up. The statement, delivered without inflection or challenge, nonetheless stopped Maya mid-stride. Before she could formulate a response, they reached the facility doors. "Wait here while I bring him out," Maya instructed, unlocking the entrance. He can be unpredictable with new people. Inside, Phantom was already alert, standing at the gate of his spacious run. Unlike his usual indifferent posture when Maya entered alone, his entire body vibrated with attention, ears forward, eyes fixed on the door behind her. "We have a visitor," Maya told him, clipping a lead to his collar. "Best behavior, please." Phantom didn't acknowledge her words, his focus unwavering. When Maya opened the door to the outside training yard, he moved with unusual purpose, pulling forward with restrained power. Sophie stood exactly where Maya had left her, small hands tucked into the pockets of her oversized jacket. When Phantom emerged, her expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in her posture, a subtle straightening, a new alertness. For his part, Phantom displayed behavior Maya had never witnessed before. He stopped 3 feet from Sophie, neither advancing nor retreating, his usual independence replaced by intense concentration. No barking, no circumnavigation to check for treats or toys, no dismissive turning away after initial assessment. Just complete, focused presence. "His name is Phantom?" Sophie asked, eyes locked with the dog's. "Yes, because of his coloring and how silently he moves," Maya explained, watching the unusual interaction with professional curiosity. Sophie nodded slightly, as if confirming something to herself. Then, without seeking permission, she slowly extended one hand, palm down, fingers curled loosely, not reaching for the dog, just offering a point of connection. Maya started to caution her but stopped, recognizing the girl's careful approach was perfectly appropriate, neither threatening nor invading the dog's space. Phantom remained motionless for several long seconds. Then, with deliberate slowness that conveyed decision rather than hesitation, he stepped forward and sniffed Sophie's hand. His posture communicated none of the dismissive assessment he'd shown to dozens of rangers who had attempted to connect with him. After thoroughly investigating her scent, Phantom did something that made Maya's breath catch. He lowered his head slightly, allowing Sophie's hand to rest on his forehead in a gesture that looked remarkably like deference. "He's sad," Sophie said quietly. Maya blinked in surprise. "Sad? What makes you say that?" "His eyes, like my Aunt Claire's when she thinks I'm not looking." Sophie kept her hand on Phantom's head, her touch gentle but confident. "He's waiting for someone who understands." The simple observation struck Maya with unexpected force. In all her focus on training methods and command compliance, had she missed something fundamental about the extraordinary animal before her? Phantom shifted, moving to stand beside Sophie rather than in front of her. The position was protective, companionable, a stance he had never voluntarily taken with Maya or any other ranger. "Can I walk with him?" Sophie asked, looking up at Maya for the first time since Phantom had emerged. Still processing what she was witnessing, Maya nodded. "Stay within the fenced area. The lead is just a precaution. He's not aggressive." Sophie accepted the leather lead, and without any verbal command or visible signal, began walking the perimeter of the training yard. Phantom moved beside her, in perfect synchronization, matching his pace to her smaller steps. No pulling, no independent exploration, no selective deafness that had characterized every training session for months. Maya watched in astonishment as they completed a full circuit of the yard. When they returned to where she stood, Sophie handed back the lead with a solemn expression. "Do you work with him every day?" she asked. "Yes," Maya confirmed, still struggling to reconcile the composed animal beside Sophie with the willfully independent creature she'd been battling for months. "Can I come back tomorrow?" The request caught Maya off guard. Her instinct was to protect the K9 program from interference, especially given the high-stakes challenge underway. But the evidence before her was undeniable. Phantom had shown more genuine engagement in 20 minutes with Sophie than in 3 months with professional handlers. "I'll need to speak with your aunt," she said carefully, "and there would need to be proper supervision." Sophie nodded acceptance of these conditions, then turned back to Phantom. She leaned close to his ear and whispered something too quiet for Maya to hear. The dog's ear twitched in response, and for a moment Maya could have sworn his expression changed, alert to something beyond the present moment. As they walked back to the main ranger station, Maya found herself studying both girl and dog with new eyes. Something profound had occurred in that brief interaction, something that challenged her professional understanding and pride. For 3 months, she had attributed Phantom's resistance to exceptional intelligence and a need for advanced training approaches. What if the truth was both simpler and more complex? When they reached administration, Claire Lawson looked up in surprise. The family resemblance between aunt and niece was evident, though Claire's face showed the strain of sudden parenthood and recent grief. "Sophie, there you are. I was getting worried." She glanced questioningly at Maya. "I hope she hasn't been bothering you, Ranger Reeves." "Not at all," Maya assured her. "Actually, Sophie has shown quite a remarkable connection with Phantom." And Claire's eyes widened. "The competition dog? The one no one can handle?" Maya nodded, choosing her words carefully. "Sophie seems to have a natural understanding with him that we haven't been able to establish. With your permission, I'd like to invite her back to observe some training sessions." The surprise on Claire's face shifted to something more complex, hope tinged with caution. "Sophie, is this something you'd want to do?" she asked gently, in the tone of someone accustomed to receiving little response. Sophie nodded, more animation in the gesture than she'd shown all afternoon. "He needs someone to listen to him," she said simply. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "That's the most she's said about anything in weeks," she whispered to Maya, as they made arrangements for Sophie to return the following afternoon. Maya found herself contemplating the unexpected turn of events. The challenge that had begun as a matter of professional pride had transformed into something she couldn't yet define. A grieving child and a resistant dog had formed an instantaneous connection that defied conventional training wisdom. Later, that evening, alone in her cabin with Phantom sprawled by the fireplace, Maya reviewed her training journals. 3 months of detailed notes documented technique after technique, each meeting the same inscrutable resistance. Yet in 20 minutes, a 10-year-old girl had somehow bypassed all barriers. "What did she say to you?" Maya asked the dog, who lifted his head at the question, ears perked with unusual attentiveness. "What did she understand that none of us did?" Phantom offered no answer, but his gaze held Maya's with an intensity that felt like communication nonetheless. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that perhaps the problem had never been with the dog's ability to understand, but with the handler's ability to listen. The realization was both humbling and exhilarating. If Sophie could maintain that connection, if it could be developed into a working partnership, it might not only save Phantom's career, but revolutionize their approach to canine training. Of course, it would also mean admitting that her declaration had been wrong, that someone else could succeed where she had failed. Maya's pride warred briefly with her commitment to the program, but as she watched Phantom's alert posture, the decision crystallized. Some things were more important than being right. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new approaches, and perhaps a path forward that none of them had imagined. For Phantom, for Sophie, and for a K9 program that might benefit from the wisdom of those who understood loss and resilience firsthand. As rain drummed against the cabin roof, Maya began drafting a new training plan, one that would incorporate Sophie's natural abilities while adhering to necessary protocols. If they succeeded, it would challenge everything she thought she knew about canine training. If they failed, she pushed the thought aside. Sometimes the most important lessons came from the most unexpected teachers. Tomorrow she would begin, learning from both a grieving child and a dog that had been waiting for someone who spoke his language. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The following afternoon brought clearer skies to Olympic National Park. Sunlight filtered through ancient cedars, casting dappled patterns across the training yard where Maya waited with barely concealed anticipation. She'd spent the morning reorganizing her approach, trying to understand what had transpired during Sophie's brief interaction with Phantom. When Claire's sedan pulled into the gravel parking area, Maya noticed Sophie sitting straighter in the passenger seat, scanning for something or someone. The girl emerged quickly, carrying a small backpack, her movements more purposeful than the day before. "I brought my rain jacket this time," Sophie announced as she approached, unzipping her backpack to reveal a carefully folded yellow slicker. "And Claire packed extra socks in case we have to walk through mud." Maya smiled at the practical preparation. "That's good thinking. The training areas can get pretty wet." Claire approached more slowly, her expression a mixture of hope and caution. "This is the most enthusiastic she's been about anything since." She trailed off, glancing at her niece. "I understand," Maya assured her. "We'll take it slow. Just observation today." "Actually," Claire lowered her voice, "the school counselor thinks this might be really good for her. Animals sometimes reach children when people can't." She hesitated. Her parents' search and rescue dogs were her whole world. After the accident, she wouldn't even look at dogs anymore, turned her head when we passed them on sidewalks. Maya absorbed this new information with growing interest. "But something about Phantom is different." "I have no idea," Claire admitted. "All I know is that she talked more last night than in the past 3 months combined. Mostly about him." They watched as Sophie stood at the fence, gaze fixed on E.T., the K9 facility entrance, small fingers curled around the chain links. "I've got meetings until 5, Claire said. "Is that enough time?" "Perfect," Maya assured her. "We'll be right here when you return." As Claire drove away, Maya approached Sophie with newfound perspective. "Ready to see Phantom again?" The girl nodded, solemn but expectant. "Is he alone all day when you're not training?" "No, we have a rotation of handlers who exercise all our canines," Maya explained, leading her toward the facility. "They each have their own comfortable runs, proper nutrition, and environmental enrichment. It's like a specialized home designed around their needs." Sophie considered this, but they'd rather be working. The simple observation struck Maya. Not a question, but an understanding statement that captured the essential nature of working dogs, particularly breeds like the Belgian Malinois. That's exactly right. They're happiest when they have a job, a purpose that engages their natural abilities. Inside the K9 building, they could hear Phantom before seeing him. Not barking, Maya had never heard him waste energy on unnecessary noise, but the distinctive sound of movement. As they rounded the corner to his run, Maya stopped in surprise. Phantom stood alert at the gate, none of his usual lounging indifference evident. At the sight of Sophie, his ears perked forward, body language conveying what Maya could only interpret as anticipation. No handler had ever received such a welcome. "He remembers me," Sophie said quietly, her expression unchanging though her voice carried a hint of something lighter. "Seems that way," Maya agreed, unlocking the gate. "Would you like to put his lead on? I'll show you how." Sophie accepted the training lead, approaching Phantom with natural confidence. The dog lowered his head, allowing her to clip the lead without the slightest resistance. Maya watched with professional fascination as Sophie checked the attachment, with the methodical care of someone much older. "My dad showed me how," she explained, correctly interpreting Maya's surprise. "He said a properly secured lead can save lives in rescue situations." "Your dad was exactly right," Maya confirmed, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place. "Were you involved in their work?" "They were teaching me," Sophie replied simply. "I was going to be a handler too someday." The weight of lost dreams hung briefly between them. The parents who would never complete that teaching, the future path disrupted by tragedy. But there was determination in Sophie's posture as she stood beside Phantom, a resilience that resonated with Maya's own experience of rebuilding after loss. "Let's see how he walks with you today," Maya suggested, leading them outside to the training yard. What followed was unlike any K9 session in Maya's 15 years of experience. Without commands, whistles, or visible signals, Sophie and Phantom moved through the space in perfect synchronization. When she paused, he stopped precisely beside her. When she changed direction, he adjusted without tension on the lead. No pulling, no resistance, no testing boundaries, just fluid partnership. Maya followed at a slight distance, observing with both professional assessment and growing wonder. "Try having him sit," she suggested, curious if the cooperation extended to verbal commands. Sophie looked down at Phantom, who already appeared attentive to her. "Sit, please," she said, not with the firm authority handlers typically used, but in the same quiet, matter-of-fact tone she used for everything. Phantom sat immediately, alert and engaged in a way Maya had never witnessed during training attempts. No delayed compliance, no assessment of whether the command was worth following, just immediate, willing response. "Now try stay and walk." "About 10 feet away," Maya instructed, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. Sophie gave the command in the same conversational tone, then walked precisely 10 feet away, turned, and waited. Phantom remained perfectly still, though his eyes never left her. "Now call him to you." "Come, Phantom," Sophie said, and the dog covered the distance in a controlled trot, stopping directly in front of her. Maya shook her head in astonishment. "That's incredible. We've been working on reliable recall for months without consistent success." Sophie stroked Phantom's head gently. "He knows what you want him to do. He just doesn't understand why you want it." The statement, delivered with childlike simplicity, struck Maya with the force of revelation. In all her structured training, her progression of commands and reinforcements, had she failed to communicate purpose to an animal intelligent enough to require it? "What do you mean exactly?" she asked carefully. Sophie considered the question with serious attention. "My dad said dogs need to know 3 things: what you want, why it matters, and that you'll keep them safe while they do it." She looked, and down at Phantom. He doesn't feel safe when he doesn't understand the why. Maya pondered this unexpectedly profound insight. Conventional training focused extensively on the what, the commands, behaviors, and responsive actions required. Safety was addressed through gradual exposure and trust building. But the why, that was typically considered irrelevant to canine understanding. Yet watching Phantom's attentive posture beside Sophie, Maya wondered if they had underestimated the cognitive abilities of these exceptional animals, particularly one as intelligent as Phantom. "How do you explain the why to a dog?" she asked, genuinely curious. "You show them," Sophie answered simply. "They learn by watching what happens." She demonstrated by walking to a nearby training prop, a pile of rubble designed to simulate disaster scenarios, and pointing to a specific section. "Search," she told Phantom, her tone conveying interest rather than command. Phantom approached the rubble pile, sniffing systematically at the area Sophie had indicated. After a moment, he alerted, pawing gently at a specific spot where Maya knew a training scent had been hidden days earlier. "Good finding," Sophie told him, offering her hand for what appeared to be their version of positive reinforcement. Not treats or exuberant praise, just quiet acknowledgement of partnership. Maya watched, transfixed by the seamless communication. "He's never completed a directed search that efficiently in our sessions. Because he knows I really want to find something," Sophie explained, "not just checking if he'll follow directions." The distinction was subtle but profound. Phantom wasn't resisting commands, he was resisting exercises that lacked authentic purpose. Maya had been testing compliance, Sophie was inviting collaboration. For the next hour, Maya guided them through increasingly complex scenarios, each revealing new dimensions of Phantom's capabilities when working with Sophie. The dog that had frustrated Olympic National Park's finest handlers performed every foundational search and rescue task flawlessly for a 10-year-old girl he'd known for less than a day. "Would you like to try something more advanced?" Maya asked, impressed beyond her expectations. Sophie nodded, her reserved demeanor warming slightly with each successful interaction. Maya retrieved a specialized training kit from the equipment shed. This contains items with different human scents. The advanced work involves discriminating between them and following specific scent trails. She laid out 5 identical cloth squares, each handled by different rangers earlier that week. "This exceeds our standard protocols, but I'm curious what he can do with you. Each item has been touched by someone different. Can you ask him to find which one I touched?" Sophie relayed the request to Phantom in her straightforward manner. The dog approached the lineup with methodical focus, sniffing each square carefully. Before indicating the central item, Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. It was indeed the one she had prepared personally. "That's correct," she confirmed. "Now let's try having him follow my scent trail." Maya had prepared the advanced training course the previous day, walking a complex path around the training area, doubling back and creating false leads. The kind of challenging trail that might be left by a disoriented hiker. No canine in their program had mastered this level of scent discrimination in less than 6 months of training. Sophie listened to the explanation, then turned to Phantom. "We need to find where Ranger Maya walked yesterday," she told him. "It's important." The addition of that simple phrase, "it's important," caught Maya's attention. Not a typical command element, but a communication of purpose, delivered as one might speak to a colleague rather than an animal. Phantom approached the starting point, nose working carefully near the ground. Then, with focused determination, he began following the invisible scent trail, navigating each turn and resisting false leads with uncanny accuracy. Where the path crossed a small stream, a feature that typically challenged even experienced search dogs by dispersing scent molecules, he paused only briefly before identifying where Maya had exited on the opposite bank. In less than 10 minutes, He had completed a course designed to take the most advanced canines at least 30 minutes of careful work. When he reached the endpoint, a hidden backpack containing Maya's jacket, he alerted with a clear, controlled bark rather than the paw, indication he'd used earlier. Different signal for different finds, Sophie explained, seeing Maya's surprise. Dad taught me that each type of discovery should have its own alert. Maya nodded, professional amazement mingling with growing respect for both the girl's knowledge and Phantom's adaptability. The dog was demonstrating capabilities beyond their program standards, yet had consistently resisted displaying them for certified handlers. "Sophie," Maya began carefully, "would you be interested in working with Phantom more regularly, perhaps a few afternoons each week?" The girl's expression remained serious, but something brightened in her eyes. "Is that allowed? Because of the unchallenge?" The question reminded Maya of the precarious professional situation she'd created. The Phantom assessment had been framed around handlers attempting to train the dog where she had failed. What was happening here defied those parameters. This wasn't about training techniques, but something more fundamental, a connection that transcended conventional methods. "We'll need to figure that out," Maya admitted. "But what you've accomplished today is remarkable. Phantom has abilities we haven't been able to access until now." As they walked back toward the main facility, Maya's thoughts raced with possibilities and complications. Allowing Sophie to become Phantom's primary handler would effectively concede her challenge, admitting someone else had succeeded where she had failed. Her position as K9 program lead would be at risk per Pierce's terms. Yet watching how naturally Sophie and Phantom moved together, how effortlessly they communicated, made the professional consequences seem secondary. This partnership could elevate their entire search and rescue capability, potentially saving lives that might otherwise be lost in Olympic National Park's vast wilderness. Inside the K9 building, Maya introduced Sophie to basic care protocols, checking paws for debris, proper brushing techniques, examining ears and teeth for early signs of health issues. The girl absorbed everything with serious attention, asking thoughtful questions that reflected her previous exposure to working dogs. "My parents' dogs were German shepherds," she volunteered as they worked. "Cora and Rusty, they were avalanche specialists." It was the most personal information she had shared, offered while carefully checking between Phantom's toes for irritants. Maya recognized the significance. How caring for Phantom was creating space for Sophie to reconnect with positive memories amid her grief. "Shepherds are excellent mountain rescue dogs," Maya affirmed. "Was Rusty named for his coloring?" Sophie nodded, the hint of a smile touching her face briefly. "He had these rusty patches on his muzzle. Dad said he looked like he'd been eating spaghetti sauce." The small, precious memory seemed to surprise her, as if she hadn't expected to recall it with anything but pain. As they completed Phantom's care routine, Maya made a decision. "I'd like to speak with your aunt about creating a special program. It would involve you working with Phantom several days a week, learning proper handling techniques, and helping develop his search capabilities." "What about the challenge?" Sophie asked perceptively. "Won't you lose?" Maya appreciated the direct question. "Technically, yes. Someone else would have succeeded where I couldn't, but there's something more important happening here than winning." "A bet." Sophie considered this with the gravity Maya had come to recognize as characteristic. "You could pretend you trained him and I'd just help." The offer, made with such innocent pragmatism, touched Maya unexpectedly. "That wouldn't be honest," she said gently, "and honesty matters more than pride. Besides, what you're doing with Phantom isn't just helping, it's teaching all of us something new about communication and partnership." When Claire arrived to collect Sophie, Maya proposed the special training program. She explained the exceptional progress they'd witnessed, and the unique connection between girl and dog, carefully framing it as a mutually beneficial arrangement that would support Sophie's healing while advancing the K9 program's capabilities. The counselor did say animal therapy might help, Claire acknowledged, watching her niece brushing Phantom with careful attention to each section of his coat. But I never imagined anything like this. It goes beyond therapy, Maya explained. Sophie has an intuitive understanding of working dogs from her background with her parents. What she's accomplishing with Phantom could genuinely enhance our search and rescue capabilities. They discussed practical arrangements. 3 afternoons weekly after school, plus occasional weekend sessions when specific training scenarios were scheduled. Claire expressed concern about Sophie becoming too attached to another dog after losing her parents' companions in the same accident. I can't bear the thought of her experiencing another loss, she admitted quietly. Maya understood. The worry. We'd be clear from the beginning that Phantom is a working park service dog, but the relationship would be meaningful for both of them, even with those boundaries. As they finalized details, Maya felt a mixture of professional excitement and personal trepidation. The arrangement would inevitably attract attention, raising questions about the challenge and her earlier declarations. Park politics would certainly complicate matters, particularly with Pierce looking for opportunities to restructure the K9 program. Yet watching Sophie and Phantom together, the solemn girl finding purpose in caring for the extraordinary dog, and the resistant animal finding connection with someone who somehow spoke his language, Maya couldn't doubt she was making the right decision, regardless of professional consequences. Later that evening, after Sophie and Claire had departed, Maya sat in her office updating training logs. The door opened without a knock, and Jack Wilson entered, his expression unreadable. "Heard you had a visitor at the K9 facility today," he said, settling into the chair opposite her desk. "Claire Lawson's niece, the one who lost her parents on Rainier?" News traveled with typical ranger station efficiency. Word gets around fast. "Small community," Jack shrugged, "especially when it involves our celebrity problem dog. Henderson was exercising his K9 during your session. Said he'd never seen Phantom behave that way with anyone." Maya sighed, setting down her pen. "It's remarkable, Jack. Everything we've been trying to accomplish for months, Sophie achieved in minutes. Perfect recall, scent discrimination, alert behaviors, all without traditional command structures." Jack whistled softly. "That exceptional, huh?" "Beyond exceptional. It's like they speak a language none of us understand." She gestured to the training logs. "I'm setting up a special program for them to work together regularly." "Pierce won't like that," Jack noted. "Undermines the whole premise of his challenge if you're essentially conceding that someone else succeeded where you failed." "I know," Maya acknowledged. "But this is bigger than the challenge or my pride. You should see them together, Jack. It's not just that Phantom responds to her, it's how he responds. There's a level of communication happening that could transform our understanding of these high-intelligence working dogs." Jack studied her with the perceptiveness of long friendship. "You're really willing to risk your position over this?" "If necessary," Maya confirmed. "Though I'm hoping rational minds will see the larger benefit to the program." She paused, considering how to explain what she'd witnessed. "Sophie said something today that keeps resonating. She said Phantom needs to understand not just what we want him to do, but why it matters. Sounds simple enough. That's just it. It should be obvious, but it fundamentally challenges our approach. We train these dogs with sophisticated techniques focused on behaviors and responses, but we've never adequately addressed their need to understand purpose." Maya leaned forward. "What if highly intelligent dogs like Phantom aren't just capable of comprehending the why behind commands, but actually require it for full engagement. Jack contemplated this. Wouldn't be the first time a child's perspective simplified something experts overcomplicated. Exactly. Maya felt a surge of excitement at having someone understand the significance. I've requested permission to document this new approach formally. It could have implications beyond just Phantom. And your position as K9 lead? Maya's enthusiasm tempered. That's more complicated. Technically, if Sophie succeeds where I failed, Pierce has grounds to reassign me per the terms of the challenge. But I'm hoping the innovative nature of the approach might offer some protection. Jack's expression turned shrewd. There might be another angle. The challenge specified that someone had to train Phantom to perform reliably. But from what you're describing, the girl isn't training him in any conventional sense. That's true, Maya considered. She's communicating with him differently, creating understanding rather than conditioning responses. Might be worth emphasizing that distinction, Jack suggested. You weren't wrong that no one could train him using established methods. This is something entirely different. The semantic distinction offered a potential lifeline, though Maya wasn't sure it would satisfy Pierce's evident desire to restructure the program. Still, it provided a perspective worth developing. Their conversation was interrupted by the communications radio crackling to life. Base to all available units. We have a reported missing hiker in the High Divide area. Male, 35, separated from group approximately 4 hours ago. Jack and Maya exchanged glances. The High Divide Trail traversed challenging alpine terrain with precipitous drops and confusing trail intersections. As darkness approached, temperatures would drop significantly, creating risk for an unprepared or injured hiker. Might be a chance to see what your wonder dog can really do, Jack observed, standing, if he's suddenly cooperating. Maya considered this. Phantom had received all the fundamental training for search operations. The challenge had always been reliable, response to commands, not capability. With Sophie demonstrating such unexpected success in basic exercises, would the same connection translate to an actual search scenario? It was a professionally risky proposition, deploying a K9 that had not completed certification protocols. Yet the potential benefit to a missing hiker could outweigh procedural concerns. I need to make some calls, Maya decided. This could be exactly the opportunity we need to demonstrate Phantom's true capabilities and Sophie's unique approach. As Jack departed to join the developing search operation, Maya reached for her phone. The conversation with Claire would be delicate. Requesting permission for Sophie to participate in an actual search operation raised complex questions of safety, liability, and potential trauma for a child already processing significant loss. Yet something told Maya that this unexpected partnership between grieving girl and resistant dog might represent their best chance of bringing a lost hiker home safely. Some connections defied conventional wisdom, emerging from the most unlikely circumstances to reveal new possibilities none of them had imagined. The search operation would test not just Phantom's abilities and Sophie's intuitive approach, but Maya's own willingness to transcend established protocols in service of both innovation and immediate human need. As she dialed Claire's number, she felt the weight of multiple responsibilities. To the missing hiker, to Sophie's well-being, to Phantom's development, and to the integrity of a program she had helped build over 15 years. Whatever happened next would either validate her instinct that something extraordinary was developing between girl and dog, or confirm Pierce's assessment that her judgment had become compromised. Either way, lives and futures hung in the balance of decisions being made in these crucial moments. Night was falling rapidly over Olympic National Park as Maya pulled into Claire Lawson's driveway. The conversation over the phone had been tense, but productive. After initial resistance, Claire had recognized the significance of Sophie's potential contribution to the search effort. Now Maya needed to transport both Sophie and Phantom to the trailhead where search operations were centralizing. As she approached the modest home, the front door opened. Sophie stood silhouetted in the doorway, already dressed in hiking boots and a warm jacket, her small backpack from earlier apparently repacked for the new circumstances. The girl's preparedness once again struck Maya. This was a child who had been raised by mountain guides who understood emergency response protocols from a young age. Claire explained about the missing hiker, Sophie said as Maya approached. Phantom can help find him. The simple confidence in her statement carried no hubris, only matter-of-fact certainty. Maya found herself nodding. I believe he can, especially with your help. But we need to be clear about how this works. This is an official search operation with specific protocols. Claire appeared behind her niece, concern evident in the tight lines around her mouth. I've packed extra layers, water and some protein bars, she told Maya. She knows to stay with you at all times. She'll be with me or another ranger throughout, Maya assured her. We won't be on the front lines of the search. Our role is to test Phantom's capabilities in real conditions while supporting the primary teams. Claire knelt to Sophie's level. You follow every instruction Ranger Reeves gives you, understand? No exceptions. I understand, Sophie replied solemnly. Dad always said safety protocols matter most in rescue situations. The mention of her father seemed to ease rather than distress Claire, as if the connection to her sister and brother-in-law's teachings provided reassurance. Your parents would be proud of you helping, she said softly, giving Sophie a quick hug before turning to Maya. What time should I expect you back? That depends on how the search develops. If we locate the missing hiker quickly, we could be back within a few hours. Otherwise, I'll have Sophie brought back before midnight, regardless of the search status, Maya explained. I've arranged for her to stay with our base camp coordinator if the operation continues. As they drove toward the High Divide trailhead, Phantom sat calmly in his specialized compartment in Maya's Ranger vehicle. Unlike his usual restless energy during transport to training sessions, he appeared focused and settled. Occasionally, his ears would swivel toward Sophie, who sat quietly in the passenger seat. Have you ever been on a real search before? Maya asked, navigating the winding park roads. 3 times with my parents, Sophie answered, surprising Maya. But I stayed at base camp. They said I could start coming on actual search lines when I turned 12. The matter-of-fact response revealed layers of experience Maya hadn't anticipated. What did you do at base camp? Helped with communications and kept track of the search grid markers on the maps. Sophie glanced at Phantom in the rearview mirror. I learned how to read the dog's GPS trackers too, so we could see where they'd already searched. Maya's estimation of the girl's potential contribution elevated further. Not only did Sophie have an exceptional connection with Phantom, but she also possessed foundational knowledge of search operations that most adult volunteers took months to acquire. The missing hiker's name is Michael Turing, Maya explained, shifting to briefing mode. 35 years old, experienced day hiker, but not familiar with Olympic National Park specifically. He was with 3 friends when they separated at Split Junction. He wanted to push to the summit viewpoint while they took the lower route. When he didn't meet them at the designated rendezvous, they backtracked but couldn't find him. Sophie absorbed the information with serious attention. How long has he been missing? About 5 hours now. His friends reported him missing. Approximately 3 hours after their separation. Standard procedure would be to deploy multiple ground teams along with certified K9 units. Maya paused, then added the critical detail. Phantom isn't officially certified yet. That's why this is unusual. But he can do it, Sophie stated with quiet certainty. Maya nodded slowly. I believe he can. The question is whether he'll follow search protocols reliably with professional handlers. He'll do it with me, Sophie said, again without boasting, simply stating what she perceived as fact. As they approached the trailhead, the search operation came into view. Multiple ranger vehicles, emergency response teams setting up lighting for the approaching darkness, volunteers checking equipment. Maya parked in the designated first responder area and turned to Sophie. When we arrive at command, there will be questions about your presence. Let me handle those. The incident commander needs to approve any adjustments to standard protocol, including having you work with Phantom. Sophie nodded her understanding as they exited the vehicle. Maya retrieved Phantom from his compartment, attaching his working vest, and led. The dog's demeanor had transformed entirely, alert, focused, poised for purpose. When Sophie approached, he looked between her and Maya as if assessing the command structure for the operation. We're working together, Sophie told him quietly, placing her hand briefly on his shoulder, to find someone who's lost. The simple explanation seemed to satisfy Phantom, who moved with controlled energy beside them as they approached the command post, a folding table where Incident Commander Ranger Diane Lopez coordinated with team leaders. Lopez looked up as they approached, her experienced gaze taking in the unexpected trio, Maya, Phantom, and a young girl she didn't recognize. Her eyebrows rose questioningly. Ranger Reeves, she acknowledged. I see you've brought Phantom. Is he suddenly operational? Conditional operational status, Maya responded formally. This is Sophie Lawson. She's demonstrated exceptional handling capabilities with Phantom during training exercises today. I believe they can contribute effectively to this search operation. Lopez's expression remained skeptical as she glanced at Sophie. You're proposing deploying an uncertified K9 with a child handler in deteriorating conditions. I'm proposing a controlled deployment along the primary search route with myself as direct supervision and additional ranger support, Maya clarified. Sophie has previous experience with search operations through her parents, who were mountain rescue specialists. Recognition flickered in Lopez's eyes at this information. Lawson? The avalanche incident on Rainier a few months back? Maya nodded slightly, hoping Sophie wouldn't be distressed by the reference. Instead, the girl stepped forward, addressing Lopez directly. My parents taught me search protocols since I was 7. I understand grid patterns, tracking markers, and handler communications. Phantom works differently with me than with other handlers. The composed, articulate response from someone so young clearly caught Lopez off guard. She studied Sophie for a moment before turning back to Maya. This is highly irregular. So is this situation, Maya countered. We have an experienced hiker missing in rapidly cooling conditions on technical terrain. Every additional resource matters, especially one with Phantom's exceptional scent capabilities. Lopez deliberated, then turned to her operations map. I've got 4 ground teams already deployed on these vectors. Team 2 reported possible tracks an hour ago, but lost the trail at the rockfield. She indicated a particular section where the trail crossed an extensive talus slope. That's our most promising lead, but darkness is complicating visual tracking. Maya recognized the operational opening. Scent detection becomes even more valuable in low-light conditions. Phantom can work effectively in darkness with proper handling. After another moment of consideration, Lopez made her decision. You can deploy along Team 2's route as a secondary resource. Jackson will accompany you as safety officer. She pointed to a ranger checking communications equipment nearby. Any sign of weather change or safety concern, you extract immediately. The child remains with the safety officer at all times if conditions deteriorate. Understood, Maya agreed. And Reeves? Lopez added as they turned to prepare. This better not be an expensive distraction. We've got a life on the line. The implicit warning was clear. If this unorthodox approach failed, the professional consequences would extend beyond the existing challenge. Maya accepted the additional pressure with a short nod. Ranger Ethan Jackson approached as they gathered. Necessary equipment, headlamps, additional layers, emergency medical supplies, and specialized gear for Phantom. "So this is the girl everyone's talking about," he remarked, studying Sophie with undisguised curiosity. "The one who speaks dog." "Sophie Lawson," Maya introduced her. "Sophie, this is Ranger Jackson. He'll be providing additional safety support during our deployment." Jackson crouched to Sophie's level. "Your Aunt Claire works in admin, right? She's mentioned you're pretty amazing." Sophie shrugged slightly, uncomfortable with the personal attention. Her focus remained on Phantom, who stood alertly at her side, already wearing his search harness with attached GPS tracker and identification markers. "We should get moving," Maya redirected, sensing Sophie's discomfort. "We'll lose more daylight if we delay." 20 minutes later, they were hiking steadily up the High Divide Trail, headlamp beams cutting through the growing darkness. Phantom moved ahead on a longer lead held by Sophie, who maintained perfect positioning despite the challenging terrain. Maya had provided a brief refresher on search protocols during their equipment preparation, how to indicate when Phantom picked up a scent, how to mark their route, how to maintain communication with the team. Jackson walked slightly behind, observing with professional interest. "Never seen that dog so focused," he commented quietly to Maya. "3 different handlers tried working with him last month. One nearly quit the program afterward. He's not responding to conventional handling approaches," Maya explained in an equally low voice. "Sophie communicates differently. She provides context and purpose, not just commands." "Context and purpose," Jackson repeated thoughtfully. Like he needs to understand the why, not just the what." "Exactly," Maya confirmed, pleased by his quick comprehension. "We've been assuming compliance through conditioning, but Phantom seems to require comprehension and meaning." They reached the junction where the missing hiker had separated from his group. Maya gathered them briefly. "This is our starting point. Team 2 already worked this area, but found no conclusive trail. We'll need something they missed." Sophie knelt beside Phantom, removing a Ziploc bag Maya had prepared containing a hat borrowed from one of the missing hiker's friends. She opened it carefully, allowing Phantom to investigate the scent thoroughly while speaking to him in low tones. "This belongs to Michael," she explained to the dog. "He's lost somewhere ahead, and it's getting cold. We need to find which way he went where the other teams couldn't see his path." Once again, Maya was struck by the direct communication of purpose, not just the mechanics of the search, but the meaning behind it. Phantom absorbed the information with focused attention, then turned to the junction, nose working methodically as Sophie removed the tracking lead from her belt. "Ready?" Maya asked, checking both Sophie and Phantom. The girl nodded, and they began. Phantom moved with purpose along the upper trail, occasionally pausing to verify the scent before continuing confidently. His body language displayed none of the distraction or independent exploration that had characterized training sessions with professional handlers. This was a different animal entirely, focused, determined, and working in seamless partnership with his young handler. They passed markers left by Team 2, indicating where they had tracked the missing hiker for approximately half a mile before losing his trail at the rock field. As they approached this critical point, Maya radioed their position to command. Alpha 4 at Rockfield Junction, K9 unit still tracking confidently. "Copy Alpha 4, came Lopez's response. "Team 2 reports no further sign beyond your position. Proceed with caution. The rock field stretched before them, a vast slope of talus and boulder that had stymied the previous search effort. Footprints and regular tracking became nearly impossible here, as the terrain left little impression even from recent passage. Sophie paused at the edge, studying the expanse. "The scent will move differently here," she told Phantom. "You'll need to check the air, not just the ground." Maya blinked in surprise at the sophisticated understanding of scent dynamics. Most handlers took significant training to comprehend how terrain affected scent dispersion and collection. Yet here was a 10-year-old girl, providing perfectly accurate guidance to a search dog. Phantom responded by adjusting his search pattern, lifting his head to sample air currents before investigating specific rocks where scent might collect. His methodical approach showed extraordinary intelligence and adaptability. Where Team 2 had lost the trail, Phantom was finding a path through scent markers invisible to human searchers. "He's got something," Sophie said suddenly, her voice tight with focus as Phantom's behavior shifted. The dog had moved about 30 yards into the rock field, his posture indicating increased interest in a particular direction, angling away from the main trail toward a steeper section of the slope. Maya reported the development to command, while Jackson marked their position with tracking tape. They followed Phantom's lead carefully, picking their way across the unstable terrain. The safety implications weighed on Maya. Bringing a child onto a technical search area carried significant responsibility, yet Sophie moved with surprising confidence, placing her feet with the careful precision of someone who had been taught proper mountain traversing techniques. Phantom's pace quickened as they cleared the rock field, his tracking behavior indicating a strengthening scent. They had veered significantly from the main trail now, following a game path barely visible in the darkness. "Command from Alpha 4, Maya radioed. "K9 has strong directional indication approximately 500 meters east of marked trail, heading toward Fisher's Ravine, tracking confidently." "Copy Alpha 4, Lopez responded, the skepticism in her tone now tempered with cautious optimism. "Proceed with caution. Team 3 is repositioning to provide backup from the north approach." As they continued, the terrain became increasingly challenging, steeper, with sections of loose scree requiring careful navigation. Jackson moved closer to Sophie, ready to assist if needed, but the girl maintained her footing with practiced care. Phantom adjusted his pace to accommodate the difficult conditions, waiting at complex sections for his handlers to navigate safely before continuing. "He's been this way," Sophie said suddenly, pointing to a broken branch that would have been nearly invisible without careful inspection. "Recently." Maya examined the break, fresh, with sap still sticky at the fracture point, additional evidence supporting Phantom's tracking. She marked the location on her GPS unit, updating command with the discovery. 20 minutes later, Phantom's behavior changed dramatically. Instead of tracking, he began indicating, a specific alert behavior signaling proximity to the search subject. He gave a controlled bark, then looked back at Sophie, ears forward. "He's found something," Sophie said urgently. "Close by." Maya immediately radioed command. "Alpha 4 to command. K9 has proximity alert approximately 800 meters east of main trail in the upper section of Fisher's Ravine, requesting additional support." "Copy Alpha 4. Team 3, ETA your position 15 minutes. Proceed with caution." They followed Phantom more slowly now, scanning with their headlamps for any sign of the missing hiker. The ravine deepened around them, creating steep walls that channeled cold air from higher elevations. If the hiker had descended into this natural trap, hypothermia would become an increasing risk as temperatures continued to drop. Phantom stopped at the edge of a small clearing, giving his alert bark again, more insistent this time. Sophie unclipped his tracking lead, giving him the command to seek that Maya had observed during their training session. The dog moved, purposefully into the brush at the clearing's edge, disappearing momentarily before barking repeatedly, the distinct cadence of a found subject. Maya's heart rate accelerated as she and Jackson pushed through the undergrowth following the sound. Their headlamps illuminated the scene, phantoms standing beside a fallen form partially concealed by dense ferns. Michael Turing lay on his side, conscious but clearly injured, his leg bent at an unnatural angle below the knee. "Michael Turing," Maya called, rushing forward. "National Park Service, we've been searching for you." The man turned toward her voice, relief washing over his pain-strained features. "Thank God," he managed. "Fell. Tried to take a shortcut. Stupid mistake." Maya immediately radioed command with their exact coordinates, while Jackson began a medical assessment. Sophie remained slightly back with Phantom, praising him quietly for his successful find while keeping clear of the emergency response space. "Compound fracture of the tibia," Jackson reported. "Moderate hypothermia setting in, conscious and oriented, but in significant pain." As they stabilized the injured hiker and prepared him for evacuation, Maya caught glimpses of Sophie with Phantom. The girl maintained a calm, supportive presence, her hand resting lightly on the dog's shoulder, not controlling, but connecting. For his part, Phantom remained attentive but settled, his mission accomplished successfully. Team 3 arrived with a specialized litter for mountain evacuation, and the technical work of extracting the injured hiker from the difficult terrain began. Throughout the process, Phantom remained positioned where he could observe the operation, without interfering, a level of situational awareness Maya had never witnessed in a canine still undergoing basic training. 4 hours after they had first arrived at the trailhead, Michael Turing was safely transferred to an ambulance for transport to the regional medical center. His injuries were serious but not life-threatening. Thanks to the swift location by Phantom and Sophie, hypothermia had been addressed before reaching dangerous levels. As the medical team departed, Incident Commander Lopez approached Maya, Sophie, and Phantom. "Impressive work," she acknowledged, her earlier skepticism replaced with professional respect. "That ravine wasn't on our primary search grid. Would have taken until morning to extend the search pattern that far east, if we even thought to look there." Phantom followed the actual path, not the expected one, Maya explained. "That's the advantage of scent tracking over probability mapping." Lopez nodded, then looked down at Sophie. "You've clearly had proper training, young lady. Your parents taught you well." Sophie accepted the compliment with quiet dignity. "They always said, trust your dog. They know things we don't." "Wise advice," Lopez agreed. She turned back to Maya. "I'll want a complete report on this operational approach. Could have significant implications for our search protocols." After Lopez departed to finalize the operation shutdown, Jack Wilson approached, having arrived with the extraction team. "Word's spreading already," he told Maya quietly. "Phantom finding a subject on his first unofficial deployment, with a child handler no less. Pierce is going to have a conniption. Or claim it was a setup," Maya acknowledged, "but the GPS tracking data will confirm the actual search pattern. This wasn't a simple find. They navigated complex terrain decisions that multiple experienced. Teams missed." Jack glanced at Sophie, who was helping Jackson return Phantom's specialized gear to the transport cases. "Either way, something extraordinary happened here tonight. Might be worth documenting thoroughly before the politics take over." Maya agreed, already formulating how to present this unprecedented success in a way that would protect both Sophie's contribution and the innovative approach to canine handling that had emerged so unexpectedly. By the time they returned Sophie to her aunt's home, it was well past midnight. Claire waited anxiously on the porch, rushing to embrace her niece as soon as Maya's vehicle pulled in. "She's fine," Maya assured her. "More than fine, actually. Sophie and Phantom located the missing hiker in an area other teams had missed. They quite literally saved his life. Claire looked between her exhausted but composed niece and Maya with astonishment. "You actually found him? In the dark?" "Phantom did," Sophie corrected. "I just helped him understand what we needed." The simple description belied the extraordinary nature of what had transpired, but Maya recognized it as characteristically accurate from Sophie's perspective. She hadn't done anything remarkable in her own mind, merely facilitated the connection between Phantom's abilities and the search requirements. "I've arranged for Sophie to have tomorrow off from school," Maya told Claire. "She should rest after tonight's effort. But if you're agreeable, I'd like to continue their training program as we discussed earlier, with some adjustments based on what we've learned." Claire studied her niece, noting something Maya had also observed. Beneath the fatigue, Sophie showed more animation and purpose than at any time since the accident. "I think that would be good," she agreed, "for both of us." As Maya prepared to leave, Sophie stopped her with an unexpected question. "Will you lose your job because Phantom worked with me instead of you?" The direct inquiry caught Maya off guard. She considered her response carefully, aware that Claire was listening. "The situation is complicated," she admitted, "but some things matter more than job titles or who gets credit. Finding that hiker tonight mattered more." Sophie absorbed this with her characteristic seriousness. "My dad used to say that being right isn't as important as doing right." The simple wisdom, clearly recalled from her father's teachings, struck Maya deeply. "Your dad sounds like he was very wise." "He was," Sophie confirmed, a flicker of grief crossing her features before resolving into something more complex. Sadness, tempered with pride and purpose. "I think he'd be glad I helped tonight." "I know he would," Maya assured her, feeling the truth of the statement beyond mere comfort. As she drove back to her cabin with Phantom, Maya contemplated the remarkable events of the evening. A successful search that defied conventional expectations. A breakthrough in understanding how an exceptional dog like Phantom might require a fundamentally different communication approach. And most significantly, a child finding healing through meaningful connection and purpose after devastating loss. Tomorrow would bring the inevitable administrative complications. Pierce would question the protocol violations, the challenge parameters, would need reconsideration, and the future of both the K9 program and Maya's role within it remained uncertain. Yet something more important had been affirmed tonight, that innovation often emerged from unexpected sources, that connection transcended conventional boundaries, and that purpose could begin healing even the deepest wounds. Whatever professional consequences awaited, Maya couldn't regret the decisions that had led to finding a lost hiker and, perhaps equally important, helping a grieving child find her way back to meaning. Phantom sat alert in his transport compartment, his energy still focused and purposeful hours after the search concluded. No longer the resistant, seemingly untrainable dog that had frustrated every handler for months, but a dedicated working partner who had found the right connection to express his exceptional abilities. "We've both got some learning to do, don't we?" Maya commented to him as they arrived at her cabin, "about what really matters and who we're meant to be." Phantom's ears flickered in response, his intelligent eyes meeting hers in what felt remarkably like understanding. Tomorrow would be soon enough to face the professional reckoning. Tonight had affirmed something more fundamental, that sometimes the most profound wisdom came from the most unexpected sources, and that being willing to learn might be the greatest strength of all. Dawn broke over Olympic National Park with a gentle mist clinging to the ancient trees. Maya sat at her desk in the ranger station, completing her official report on the previous night's search operation. She had arrived early, determined to document every aspect of Phantom and Sophie's extraordinary performance before the inevitable administrative questions began. The door opened, and Jack Wilson appeared with 2 steaming mugs. "Figured you could use this," he said, placing one on her desk. "Word's already spreading about last night. Regional director called Lopez first thing this morning." Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. "Let me guess. Concerned about protocol violations and unauthorized personnel? Actually, primarily interested in how an untrainable dog successfully located a missing hiker in challenging terrain that experienced search teams missed." Jack settled into the chair opposite her desk. "Lopez gave you considerable credit. Said your judgment call to deploy Phantom with a specialized handler likely saved Turing's life." Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's unexpectedly generous." "Lopez cares about results more than politics," Jack shrugged. "Always has, but Pierce is a different story. He's called an emergency program review meeting for 11 a.m. The news wasn't unexpected, but Maya felt her stomach tighten nonetheless. Pierce would undoubtedly frame last night's success within the context of her failed challenge, proof that someone else could indeed handle Phantom where she had not. "I'll be ready," she assured Jack, returning to her detailed report. By mid-morning, Maya had completed her documentation, compiling GPS tracking data, timeline information, and specific observations about Phantom search behaviors with Sophie. The report was thorough and objective, focusing on operational effectiveness rather than interpersonal dynamics or the politics of the challenge. At precisely 10:55, she made her way to the administration building for the program review. Outside the conference room, she encountered Dr. Elaine Hartman, the park's wildlife biologist, who occasionally consulted on canine behavioral issues. "Quite the development with Phantom," Dr. Hartman commented. "I've been reviewing the tracking data. Remarkable. Decision-making at the Rockfield Junction," Maya nodded. "Traditional probability mapping would have taken hours to extend the search grid that far east. Phantom identified the actual path rather than the expected one." "I'd be interested in observing future training sessions with this young handler," Dr. Hartman said thoughtfully. "From a scientific perspective, the communication dynamics sound fascinating." Before Maya could respond, the conference room door opened, and Deputy Director Pierce emerged, expression tightly controlled. "Ah, Reeves, punctual as always. Please come in. Dr. Hartman, thank you for joining us on short notice." Inside, Maya found a larger gathering than expected. In addition to Pierce and Dr. Hartman, the room contained Incident Commander Lopez, Regional K9 Coordinator Thomas Chen, who had driven in from Seattle, and Park Superintendent Julia Winters, the highest-ranking official in Olympic National Park's management structure. Superintendent Winters, a formidable woman in her early 60s with 3 decades of National Park Service experience, acknowledged Maya with a slight nod. Her presence elevated the meeting from routine program review to significant administrative attention. "Ranger Reeves," Pierce began once everyone was seated, "we've convened this emergency review to address last night's highly irregular deployment of K9 Asset Phantom during Search Operation 23-47, with particular focus on the involvement of a civilian miner as handler during critical search functions." The formal framing immediately established the meeting's adversarial tone. Maya maintained professional composure, noting that Pierce had conspicuously omitted mentioning the successful outcome. "Perhaps we should start with the operational results," Superintendent Winters suggested mildly, though her gaze remained penetrating. "Commander Lopez." Lopez straightened in her chair. "Search Operation 2347 located missing hiker Michael Turing, approximately 4 hours after K9 unit deployment. Subject had a compound tibial fracture and moderate hypothermia, but remained stable during extraction. Medical evaluation indicates he would have faced severe hypothermia and possibly fatal consequences if located during standard morning grid expansion. And the K9 unit responsible was Phantom, correct? Winters clarified. The same animal, previously deemed unresponsive to handler commands? Yes, ma'am, Lopez confirmed. Working with a civilian assistant handler under Ranger Reeves's direct supervision. Pierce leaned forward. A 10-year-old civilian with no formal training or certification. Let's be perfectly clear about what we're discussing. Sophie Lawson had relevant prior experience through her parents, who were certified mountain rescue specialists, Maya interjected, keeping her tone measured. Her understanding of search protocols exceeded most adult volunteers. Irregularities in handler selection aside, Pierce continued, this situation directly relates to Ranger Reeves' recent challenge regarding this particular K9. If I recall correctly, you stated that nobody could successfully handle Phantom if you couldn't. Maya met his gaze steadily. I did make that statement, yes. And yet last night someone else, a child no less, succeeded where you had failed for 3 months. Pierce's satisfaction was barely concealed. By your own terms, this would suggest your reassignment from K9 program leadership. Dr. Hartman cleared her throat. If I might offer a scientific perspective, based on the GPS tracking data and behavioral descriptions, what occurred last night doesn't appear to be conventional handling in the training sense. It represents something potentially more significant, a fundamentally different communication approach that may have implications beyond this individual case. Regional Coordinator Chen nodded. I've reviewed Ranger Reeves's preliminary report. The communication dynamics described are intriguing from a professional perspective. Most K9 training focuses on conditioned response to commands. What's suggested? Here is something closer to collaborative problem-solving. Pierce's expression tightened. We're getting sidetracked from the central issue, unauthorized protocol deviations and the terms of Ranger Reeves' challenge. I'm less concerned with a moment of professional frustration than with operational outcomes, Superintendent Winters stated calmly. Ranger Reeves, in your assessment, what made last night's deployment successful where previous training attempts had failed? Maya considered her response carefully, aware of its implications for both her career and the program's future direction. Sophie Lawson approaches communication with Phantom differently than professional handlers, myself included. Rather than focusing on command compliance, she establishes context and purpose. She explains why tasks matter, not just what needs to be done. Like speaking to a colleague rather than issuing orders, Dr. Hartman noted. Fascinating approach for a highly intelligent working dog. Exactly, Maya confirmed. Phantom consistently demonstrated exceptional cognitive abilities during evaluation. However, his resistance to traditional handling suggested our approach wasn't engaging his full capabilities. Superintendent Winters leaned back, studying Maya thoughtfully. You're suggesting our entire K9 training methodology might be inadequate for dogs of Phantom's intelligence level? Not inadequate for all K9s, Maya clarified. Our protocols work effectively for most working dogs, but Phantom represents an outlier in cognitive assessment scores. It's possible that highly intelligent dogs require a different communication framework, one that acknowledges their need to understand purpose, not just commands. Regional Coordinator Chen looked increasingly intrigued. This aligns with emerging research in canine cognition. There's growing evidence that elite working dogs process information more contextually than previously understood. Pierce interjected, with visible impatience. This theoretical discussion is all very interesting, but it doesn't address the immediate administrative concerns. Ranger Reeves made a specific claim that has now been demonstrably disproven. The terms of the challenge were clear. Superintendent Winters held up a hand. Deputy Director, I appreciate your attention to administrative consistency. However, innovation rarely follows predictable paths. She turned to Maya. What do you propose moving forward with this situation? The direct question created an opening Maya hadn't expected. She gathered her thoughts quickly. I believe we have an opportunity to develop a specialized training approach for exceptional canines like Phantom. Sophie Lawson has demonstrated an intuitive understanding of this communication framework that could benefit our program significantly. I'd like to establish a formal research initiative documenting their methods while ensuring proper oversight and safety protocols. You're suggesting we continue allowing a child to work with a service animal in official capacity? Pierce asked incredulously. Under structured supervision with appropriate limitations, Maya clarified. The potential benefits extend beyond Phantom to our entire understanding of advanced K9 capabilities. Dr. Hartman nodded enthusiastically. From a research perspective, this could be groundbreaking. I'd be willing to help design and document the study parameters. Regional Coordinator Chen added, several other parks have expressed interest in our experience with Phantom. This could position Olympic as a leader in advanced K9 methodology. Superintendent Winters considered the various perspectives before addressing Pierce directly. Deputy Director, your concerns about protocol and administrative consistency are noted. However, the National Park Service has always balanced procedural adherence with adaptive innovation. In this case, the operational success suggests merit in exploring this approach further. Pierce recognized the subtle shift in momentum. With all due respect, Superintendent, there remains significant liability concerns with a minor participating in official operations, which is why proper structure and supervision will be essential, Winters acknowledged. Ranger Reeves, can you prepare a formal proposal outlining appropriate safety parameters, supervision requirements, and research objectives by the end of the week? Yes, ma'am, Maya confirmed, surprised by the constructive direction. I'll collaborate with Dr. Hartman and Coordinator Chen to ensure comprehensive coverage of both operational and research considerations. Excellent. Winters stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. Deputy Director Pierce will review the proposal for administrative compliance, and I'll make a final determination by next Monday. In the meantime, Phantom remains on conditional operational status, with Ranger Reeves maintaining primary responsibility. As the meeting dispersed, Maya felt a complex mixture of relief and cautious optimism. The immediate threat to her position had been deflected, at least temporarily, through Superintendent Winters' pragmatic focus on results rather than rigid adherence to challenged terms. Outside the administration building, Dr. Hartman caught up with Maya. This could be quite significant, she said enthusiastically. I've been following research on exceptional canine cognition for years. The anecdotal evidence suggests certain dogs process information more like collaborative partners than subordinates, but systematic documentation has been limited. I've never seen anything like Phantom's response to Sophie, Maya admitted. It's as if they're operating on a frequency the rest of us can't access. Which raises fascinating questions about communication pathways, Dr. Hartman agreed. Children often display less hierarchical interaction patterns than adults, particularly with animals. They explain rather than command, narrate rather than direct. Sophie specifically provides context and purpose for every request, Maya noted. She tells Phantom why something matters, not just what needs doing. The implications extend beyond search and rescue, Dr. Hartman mused. Military working dogs, assistance animals, detection specialists, any situation requiring high-level canine decision-making could benefit from this approach. Their conversation was interrupted by Jack Wilson approaching with his phone extended. You'll want to see this, he said, handing the device to Maya. On the screen was a local news site featuring a prominent photograph of Sophie and Phantom from the previous night's operation, captured by one of the volunteers during the successful extraction. The headline read, "Young handler and untrainable canine hero save hiker's life in Olympic National Park." Maya scanned the article quickly, noting its emphasis on the unlikely partnership between a grieving child and an exceptional dog, both finding purpose through helping others. The reporter had interviewed Michael Turing from his hospital bed, who credited his rescue to the amazing dog and the quiet girl who seemed to speak his language. "Stories gone regional already," Jack informed them. "Seattle stations picked it up this morning. Human interest angle is irresistible. Child of mountain rescue specialists lost in tragedy finds healing by continuing her parents' legacy." Dr. Hartman raised her eyebrows. "That adds a public relations dimension the administration will need to consider." "Pierce won't be pleased," Maya observed, returning the phone. "He prefers controlling the narrative, and this is developing independently." Actually, the park's official social media already shared the story, Jack informed her with evident satisfaction. Superintendent Winters authorized it personally. Public engagement metrics are breaking records. The news surprised Maya. Winters was typically conservative about media management, particularly involving operations that deviated from standard protocol. Her willingness to embrace this story suggested recognition of its positive impact on public perception of the park service. "Have you spoken with Sophie this morning?" Dr. Hartman asked. "She must be processing quite a lot after last night's experience." Maya shook her head. "I wanted to let her rest. I'll check in this afternoon about continuing our training program." She hesitated, then added, "Assuming her aunt remains comfortable with her participation after the media attention." "Given how positive the coverage is, that might actually help," Jack suggested. "Nothing helps healing like purpose and recognition." By early afternoon, Maya had begun drafting the formal proposal requested by Superintendent Winters. The document outlined a structured training and research program that would allow Sophie to continue working with Phantom under careful supervision, while documenting their unique communication methodology for potential broader application. As she worked, her phone rang, Claire Lawson's number appearing on the screen. "Claire," Maya answered, "I was planning to call you later today. How's Sophie doing after last night?" "That's actually why I'm calling," Claire replied, her voice carrying an unexpected lightness. "She's different today, more animated. She asked to go through her parents' search and rescue manuals this morning, first time she's voluntarily touched them since the accident." Maya felt a surge of relief. "That's wonderful progress." "Her school counselor called after seeing the news story," Claire continued. "She believes this could be extremely beneficial for Sophie's processing of grief, finding connection to her parents through meaningful activities similar to their work." "I'm currently developing a formal proposal for a structured program," Maya explained, "with proper supervision and safety protocols in place. If you and Sophie are interested in continuing—" "She's more than interested," Claire confirmed. "It's the first thing she's shown genuine enthusiasm about in months." She paused before adding more softly, "She slept through the night without nightmares for the first time since coming to live with me." The simple statement conveyed volumes about the impact last night's experience had already created. "That's significant progress," Maya acknowledged. "Trauma processing often accelerates when children find meaningful connection and purpose." "The reporters want interviews," Claire mentioned, concern entering her voice. "I've declined so far, but the attention is likely to continue given the story's popularity." "The Park Service can help manage media requests," Maya assured her. "Superintendent Winters is already involved in the public communications aspect. We can ensure Sophie's privacy is protected while acknowledging her contribution." After completing her call with Claire, Maya finished the preliminary proposal draft and sent it to Dr. Hartman and Regional Coordinator Chen for initial feedback. The document detailed 3 primary components: operational protocols for Sophie's supervised work with Phantom, research methodology for documenting their communication approach, and potential applications for extending successful elements to broader K9 training programs. Later that afternoon, Maya drove to the K9 facility where Phantom had already completed his standard care routines with the facility staff. Unlike his typically indifferent demeanor during handler transitions, he displayed clear anticipation when Maya entered. Alert posture, focused attention, subtle movements toward the exit. "Yes, we're going to see Sophie," she confirmed, surprised by his evident comprehension. "Training session this afternoon." Phantom's response seemed to confirm Dr. Hartman's observations about higher cognitive processing. He wasn't simply reacting to schedule patterns. He was anticipating specific events based on contextual understanding. When they arrived at Claire's home, Sophie was waiting on the front steps, a notebook in her lap. She stood as Maya's vehicle approached, her typically solemn expression lightened with quiet purpose. "I've been studying," she announced as Maya released Phantom from his transport compartment. Mom's old training journals had special notes about working with intelligent dogs. The dog moved immediately to Sophie's side, his entire demeanor shifting from professional alertness to genuine connection. He pressed briefly against her leg in what appeared to be both greeting and reassurance. "I'd love to see those notes," Maya said, genuinely interested. "Your mother's insights might help us develop our new training approach." Sophie nodded, leading them toward a small side yard where Claire had arranged a comfortable seating area. "She wrote that smart dogs get bored with repetition unless they understand the purpose." She opened the notebook, turning to a specific page. "See, intelligence requires meaning, not just mechanics." Maya examined the handwritten notes with professional interest. Susan Lawson's observations aligned remarkably with what they were discovering about Phantom: the need for contextual understanding, purpose-driven tasks, and collaborative rather than hierarchical interaction. "Your mother was ahead of her time in understanding working dog psychology," Maya commented. "These insights align perfectly with what we're seeing with Phantom." "Dad always said Mom could read dogs better than people," Sophie replied, a brief smile touching her features at the memory. Claire appeared with a tray of lemonade and snacks. "Sophie spent the morning going through their professional materials," she told Maya quietly. "First time she's been able to face those memories without shutting down." The observation reinforced Maya's growing conviction that this unexpected partnership was providing therapeutic benefit beyond its operational value. Sophie was finding her way back to treasured connections with her parents through meaningful engagement with their professional legacy. "I've drafted a proposal for a structured program," Maya explained to them both. "If approved, it would allow Sophie to continue working with Phantom under proper supervision, while we document their communication method for potential broader application." "Would I get to help with real searches?" Sophie asked directly. Maya considered her response carefully. "Under specific conditions, yes. Each situation would be evaluated individually, with your safety as the highest priority." "I want to help," Sophie stated with quiet determination, "like my parents did." The simple declaration carried profound meaning. Not just willingness to participate in the program, but recognition of purpose extending beyond her own healing. At 10 years old, Sophie was finding her way back to meaning through service to others, continuing a legacy tragically interrupted. "There's something else I'd like to discuss," Maya said, addressing both Sophie and Claire. "The successful search has generated public interest. Superintendent Winters believes your story, finding connection and purpose through working with Phantom, could inspire others facing similar challenges." Claire's expression showed immediate concern. The media attention would be carefully managed, Maya assured her. No direct interviews unless you're comfortable, no exploitation of Sophie's grief, just acknowledgement of an extraordinary partnership that's benefiting both rescue operations and personal healing. Sophie considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Would it help other kids who lost parents? The question, direct and penetrating in its simplicity, momentarily caught Maya off guard. It very well might, she acknowledged. Finding pathways through grief, especially through meaningful connection and purpose, could offer hope to others in similar situations. Sophie looked to her aunt. Then maybe we should. Claire studied her niece with evident surprise. You'd be comfortable with people knowing your story? Not all of it, Sophie clarified, just the parts about working with Phantom and helping find the lost hiker. She stroked the dog's head gently. Dad always said helping others was the best way to help yourself. The wisdom, clearly recalled, from her father's teachings reflected a maturity beyond her years, a child processing adult concepts through the framework of remembered guidance. We can establish clear boundaries, Maya assured Claire. The Park Service has experienced public affairs specialists who understand how to protect privacy while sharing inspiring elements of the story. As they discussed potential parameters for public acknowledgement, Maya observed how Sophie continued her quiet interaction with Phantom. Not the exuberant play typical of children with dogs, but a mutual, respectful connection between partners with shared purpose. Later, they conducted a training session in a nearby meadow, building on the previous day's extraordinary performance. Maya documented each interaction, noting the subtle communication patterns emerging, how Sophie consistently provided context. Before requests, how Phantom demonstrated understanding through responsive positioning, how their movements synchronized without obvious cues. Dr. Hartman arrived midway through the session, observing with scientific interest. Remarkable synchronization, she commented quietly to Maya. Notice how neither is leading or following in the conventional sense? It's genuinely collaborative. Maya nodded, capturing video documentation of Sophie directing Phantom to locate a specific scent sample among multiple options, an advanced discrimination task usually requiring months of specialized training. She's explaining the purpose, not just the procedure, Maya noted. See how she tells him why distinguishing between similar scents matters in real search scenarios? The session continued for nearly 2 hours, with Phantom showing no signs of the disengagement or selective compliance that had characterized his previous training attempts. Whatever connection had formed between girl and dog continued strengthening through purposeful interaction. As they concluded for the day, Dr. Hartman approached Sophie directly. You have an extraordinary way of working with Phantom, she said. Would you be willing to help us understand exactly how you communicate with him? It could help other handlers work better with special dogs like him. Sophie considered the question with typical solemnity. I just talk to him like he understands. Not like he's a dog, but like he's a partner who needs to know the whole situation. That distinction might be the key insight, Dr. Hartman told Maya as they packed up the training equipment. Treating the dog as a cognitive partner, rather than a subordinate requiring direction. Simple in concept, but revolutionary in application. Maya agreed, watching as Sophie and Phantom walked together toward Claire's waiting car. The challenge now is documenting this effectively enough to incorporate elements into broader training, methodology, and navigating the politics, Dr. Hartman added perceptively. Pierce clearly has administrative concerns beyond operational effectiveness. Superintendent Winters seems to recognize the potential value, Maya replied. That's significant support at the highest level. As Maya drove back to her cabin that evening, She reflected on the extraordinary developments of the past 48 hours. What had begun as a moment of professional frustration, her declaration that no one could handle Phantom if she couldn't, had unexpectedly opened pathways to innovation, healing, and connection none of them could have anticipated. The original challenge parameters now seemed almost irrelevant compared to what was emerging, a pioneering approach to canine communication that could transform search and rescue operations while simultaneously providing healing for a grieving child and purpose for an exceptional dog whose potential had been obscured by conventional methods. Whatever administrative complications awaited, Maya felt renewed conviction that they were discovering something genuinely important, something that transcended procedural concerns and organizational hierarchies. As Sophie had so simply expressed, sometimes helping others was indeed the best way to help yourself, and sometimes the most profound insights came from unexpected teachers, a grieving child and a misunderstood dog, finding their way forward together through darkness toward healing, purpose, and light. The following week brought unseasonably clear skies to Olympic National Park. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Superintendent Winter's office as she reviewed the formal proposal Maya had submitted. The comprehensive document outlined safety protocols, research methodology, and operational parameters for the innovative partnership between Sophie and Phantom, with supporting documentation from Dr. Hartman and Regional Coordinator Chen. Maya sat across from Winters's desk, maintaining professional composure despite her internal tension. Deputy Director Pierce occupied a chair to her left, his expression tightly controlled. "This is exceptionally thorough, Ranger Reeves," Winters commented, closing the folder. "Dr. Hartman's research framework is particularly impressive." "Thank you, ma'am," Maya responded. "We believe the program has significant potential beyond its immediate operational benefits." Pierce leaned forward. "I still have reservations about liability considerations. A 10-year-old civilian participating in official operations creates unprecedented risk exposure, which is why the protocols specify graduated involvement with multiple safety checkpoints," Maya countered. "Sophie would participate only in controlled scenarios until both she and Phantom meet certification requirements." Winters tapped the folder thoughtfully. "I've consulted with regional legal counsel. With proper guardian consent forms and the supervision parameters outlined here, liability concerns can be adequately addressed." She fixed Pierce with a steady gaze, particularly given the public relations context. The reference to media attention was subtle but significant. In the days following the successful search operation, the story of Sophie and Phantom had gained remarkable traction. Regional news outlets had featured the partnership, emphasizing both the innovative approach to canine handling and the touching narrative of a grieving child finding healing through continuing her parents' legacy of rescue work. Park visitation had increased noticeably, with tourists specifically asking about the miracle search dog and his young handler. Public interest in the canine program had surged, creating opportunities for conservation education and safety awareness that aligned perfectly with the Park Service's broader mission. Public relations considerations shouldn't supersede operational standards, Pierce maintained, though with slightly less conviction. "Agreed," Winters responded, "which is why I'm particularly impressed by the rigorous certification pathway outlined here." She turned back to Maya. "The progressive skills assessment model is quite innovative, establishing clear performance benchmarks while accommodating the unique nature of this partnership." Maya had devoted particular attention to this aspect of the proposal. Drawing from Sophie's mother's training journals and Dr. Hartman's research expertise, she had developed a certification framework that would validate the partnership's capabilities, while acknowledging its unconventional methodology. Regional Coordinator Chen has approved the certification standards, Maya confirmed. They maintain all critical performance requirements while adapting assessment methods to evaluate Sophie and Phantom as an integrated team rather than Handler and K9 separately. Winters nodded approval. We'll implement the program as outlined, with quarterly review checkpoints. She glanced at Pierce. Deputy Director, I'd like you to oversee compliance with safety protocols. Your attention to procedural detail will ensure appropriate protections remain in place. The assignment was a masterful stroke of administrative management, acknowledging Pierce's concerns while channeling his scrutiny into constructive oversight rather than opposition. His expression reflected recognition of the political navigation, combining mild frustration with reluctant acceptance. Of course, Superintendent, he agreed stiffly. I'll establish a monitoring framework immediately. Excellent. Winters stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. Ranger Reeves, please inform Ms. Lawson and her niece of the program's approval. I'd like to meet them personally later this week to discuss the public engagement aspects. As they exited the administration building, Maya allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The formal approval represented not just professional vindication, but recognition of something more significant, an innovative approach discovered through unexpected circumstances that could potentially transform their understanding of advanced K9 capabilities. Jack Wilson was waiting near her vehicle, evident curiosity in his expression. Well, did Winters sign off? Full approval with quarterly reviews, Maya confirmed. Pierce will oversee safety protocols, but the program proceeds as proposed. Jack's face broke into a wide grin. Never doubted it for a minute. Not after Congressman Wallace's daughter shared that news story about Sophie and Phantom on her social media. Went viral overnight. The political dimension hadn't escaped Maya's notice. Olympic National Park fell within Congressman Wallace's district, and his environmental advocacy made him an important ally for Park Service initiatives. His personal interest in the story had likely contributed to the smoother-than-expected administrative approval. I need to inform Claire and Sophie, Maya said, checking her watch. School lets out in 30 minutes. Take Phantom with you, Jack suggested. Complete the triumvirate for the good news. The suggestion made perfect sense. Maya retrieved Phantom from the K9 facility, noting once again how his entire demeanor shifted in anticipation of seeing Sophie. His alertness, focused attention, and controlled energy projected an almost palpable sense of purpose, dramatically different from the resistant, selective compliance he had displayed during conventional training attempts. When they arrived at Sophie's school, the final bell had just rung. Children streamed from the building in typical end-of-day exuberance. Sophie emerged more sedately, walking alone until Emma Cooper, a classmate Maya recognized from previous pickups, fell into step beside her. The sight gave Maya a moment's pause. In the intense focus on the K9 program developments, she hadn't fully considered Sophie's broader social integration. The girl's isolation had seemed a natural consequence of grief, but true healing would eventually require reconnection with peers as well as purpose through her work with Phantom. Sophie spotted Maya's vehicle and changed direction, saying something brief to Emma before approaching. When she noticed Phantom watching from the rear compartment, her pace quickened slightly. Not the running excitement typical of children her age, but a subtle acceleration that reflected genuine anticipation. You brought Phantom to school, she observed as she reached the vehicle. Special occasion, Maya explained, opening the passenger door. I have news about our proposal. Sophie climbed in, immediately turning to acknowledge Phantom through the safety barrier. The dog's attention remained fixed on her, his entire posture expressing attentive connection. Superintendent Winters has approved our program, Maya explained as she pulled away from the school. You and Phantom can continue working together officially, with proper supervision and progressive training. Sophie absorbed this information with characteristic thoughtfulness. Real searches, too? Eventually, yes. We've established a certification pathway with clear benchmarks. Once you complete each level successfully, your operational participation expands accordingly. A small but genuine smile formed on Sophie's face, an expression Maya had seen only rarely, and typically only in connection with Phantom. When do we start the certification? We already have, Maya told her. Your work in the successful search operation established your baseline capabilities. Dr. Hartman has incorporated those observations into your initial assessment. As they drove toward Claire's home, Maya outlined the program structure: 3 training sessions weekly, progressive skill development, regular assessment points, and eventual operational deployment under carefully managed conditions. Sophie listened with serious attention, occasionally asking precise questions that reflected her parent-inherited understanding of search and rescue protocols. There's one other aspect we should discuss, Maya added as they arrived. Superintendent Winters would like to meet with you and your aunt about the public interest in your partnership with Phantom. The story has attracted significant attention. For the first time, Sophie showed hesitation. Would I have to talk to reporters? Only if you and your aunt are comfortable with it, Maya assured her. The Park Service can manage most public communications without direct interviews. Claire was waiting on the porch when they arrived, her expression brightening at the sight of Sophie's subtle but evident animation. "Good news, I'm guessing?" she called as they approached. "The program's been approved," Maya confirmed. "Full implementation with quarterly reviews." Claire's relief was visible. Over the past weeks, she had witnessed her niece's gradual reawakening through her work with Phantom. Small but significant steps toward healing that had convinced her of the partnership's therapeutic value beyond its operational purpose. "Superintendent Winters would like to meet with you both," Maya explained as they settled in the living room. "The story has generated substantial public interest, creating opportunities for both the K9 program and broader awareness of grief processing through meaningful activity." Claire nodded understanding. Sophie's counselor mentioned the therapeutics approach is gaining attention in professional circles as well. She's been contacted by several colleagues interested in the concept of purpose-focused healing for children experiencing traumatic loss. The multidimensional impact of their unexpected partnership continued expanding. Operational innovation in search and rescue methodology, therapeutic approaches to childhood grief, public engagement with Park Service mission, and now potential influence on professional therapeutic practices. "When would the superintendent want to meet?" Claire asked. "Thursday afternoon, if that works for your schedule," Maya replied. "She's particularly interested in your perspective on appropriate boundaries for public engagement given Sophie's age and circumstances." As they discussed logistics, Phantom maintained his characteristic position near Sophie, not demanding attention, but maintaining proximity that seemed to provide mutual reassurance. Maya observed their subtle interactions with continued professional fascination. The dog's behavior with Sophie defied conventional training outcomes, suggesting a form of communication that transcended standard handler K9 dynamics. Dr. Hartman had begun formal documentation of these patterns, identifying elements that might potentially be incorporated into broader training methodologies. The innovative approach that had emerged by necessity might ultimately transform their understanding of advanced K9 capabilities across multiple working contexts. The following day brought the first official training session under the newly approved program. Dr. Hartman joined Maya at the designated training area, a varied landscape that included woodland, meadow, and rock features, offering diverse search scenarios. "I've established baseline metrics from previous observations," Dr. Hartman explained, reviewing her documentation. "Today's session focuses on systematic assessment of communication patterns during increasingly complex tasks." When Claire's car arrived, Sophie emerged with a new addition to her usual modest equipment, a small notebook similar to those Maya had seen in her mother's search and rescue materials. "I'm keeping records like Mom did," Sophie explained, noticing Maya's interest. She wrote down everything about how the dogs worked and what they responded to best. The simple statement reflected profound connection, not just to the present work with Phantom, but to her mother's legacy and methodologies. Sophie was finding her way forward through deliberate, purposeful links to what had been lost. Throughout the 2-hour session, Dr. Hartman conducted systematic assessment, while Maya guided Sophie and Phantom through progressively challenging scenarios. The dog's performance exceeded even their elevated expectations, consistently accurate. Scent discrimination, precise alert behaviors, and flawless recall even with significant environmental distractions. "The communication efficiency is remarkable," Dr. Hartman noted, reviewing her data. "Conventional handling typically requires multiple command repetitions during complex scenarios. Their exchange is almost conversational. Clarification, confirmation, execution." Maya had observed the same pattern. When uncertainty arose in a search parameter, Sophie didn't simply repeat commands with increasing intensity as conventional handlers might. Instead, she provided additional context or clarified the task's purpose, enabling Phantom to adjust his approach based on enhanced understanding rather than conditioned response. "It's collaboration rather than direction," Maya agreed. "She explains situations and he applies his capabilities accordingly." After completing the formal assessment components, they introduced a new challenge, a complex scent discrimination task requiring Phantom to distinguish between multiple similar targets based on age and intensity rather than type. This advanced skill typically required months of specialized training for even the most capable canines. Sophie listened carefully to the explanation, then knelt beside Phantom to relay the task requirements. "This is different from finding just any scent," she told him quietly. "We need to find which one is newest, the most recent person who touched these objects. That helps us know which direction they went when there are many crossing paths." The clear explanation of purpose, why the discrimination mattered in actual search scenarios, reflected Sophie's intuitive understanding of Phantom's need for contextual meaning. Not simply what to find, but why the distinction was operationally significant. Phantom approached the test objects with methodical focus, investigating each thoroughly before indicating the correct target with his precise alert behavior. The performance demonstrated not just scent capability, but cognitive processing, understanding the conceptual task rather than merely identifying a trained scent signature. This approaches the limits of what we believe possible in canine discrimination, Dr. Hartman remarked, visibly impressed. Most canines can distinguish between scent types or track specific individuals, but conceptual discrimination based on abstract parameters like newest versus oldest suggests higher cognitive processing than typically acknowledged in training protocols. The session concluded with a final assessment of recall reliability, Phantom's consistent return when called despite compelling environmental distractions. This fundamental capability had been the primary stumbling block in conventional training attempts, with the dog demonstrating selective compliance that undermined operational reliability. With Sophie, Recall performance remained flawless across multiple trials and increasing distraction levels. The dog responded immediately to her quiet, "Come back now, please," a phrase that would have seemed absurdly gentle in traditional canine training contexts where firm, clear commands were standard practice. As they packed up the training equipment, Jack Wilson arrived with news from headquarters. "Congressman Wallace is visiting the park tomorrow," he informed Maya, "specifically requested a demonstration of your innovative K9 program. Superintendent Winters approved, pending your assessment of readiness." The political dimension continued expanding. Congressional interest could translate to program funding, research support, and broader implementation across other parks and public safety agencies. "We'd need to ensure appropriate focus on the operational aspects rather than Sophie personally," Maya noted, glancing toward where the girl was carefully brushing Phantom after their training session. "Winters was explicitly clear about that boundary," Jack assured her. "Demonstration of methodology and capability, not personal narrative exploitation. Program focus, not human interest." Maya considered the request thoughtfully. Sophie had demonstrated remarkable composure throughout the training session, and Phantom's performance exceeded certification standards across all measured parameters. A controlled demonstration for interested officials represented reasonable program advancement without undue pressure. "I'll discuss it with Claire," she decided. "If she and Sophie are comfortable with the parameters, a brief demonstration of basic capabilities would be appropriate." That evening, after confirming Claire and Sophie's willingness to participate in the demonstration, Maya prepared the formal assessment documentation from the day's session. The quantitative metrics were impressive enough: 100% accuracy in target identification, perfect recall reliability, advanced discrimination capabilities exceeding certified K9 standards. Yet the qualitative observations proved even more compelling. The nature of communication between handler and dog, the collaborative rather than directive interaction pattern, the emphasis on purpose and understanding rather than compliance and control. These elements represented potential transformation in their approach to working with highly intelligent animals like Phantom. Not merely improved technical outcomes, but fundamental reconceptualization of the human-canine partnership in specialized work contexts. The following morning brought ideal conditions for the congressional demonstration: clear skies, mild temperature, and light breeze, providing optimal scent movement for the scenarios Maya had designed. She had selected 3 progressively challenging tasks that would showcase the partnership's capabilities without overtaxing Sophie or creating undue public pressure. Congressman Wallace arrived with minimal entourage, just 2 staff members, and Superintendent Winters. His reputation for environmental advocacy and hands-on engagement with Park Service initiatives proved accurate as he approached Maya with genuine interest rather than political performativity. "Ranger Reeves," he greeted her warmly, "I've heard remarkable things about your innovative approach to K9 training. The successful night search particularly caught my attention. Finding a subject in terrain that experienced teams had missed suggests significant methodological advancement. The credit belongs primarily to Sophie and Phantom," Maya responded honestly. "Their unique communication approach has revealed capabilities we hadn't fully accessed through conventional methods." Congressman Wallace turned toward where Sophie waited quietly with Phantom at the edge of the demonstration area. Rather than approaching immediately with the intimidating attention adults often direct toward children, he knelt to greet Phantom first, a respectful acknowledgement of both the dog's working status and Sophie's potential discomfort with direct focus. "This must be the famous Phantom," he said, allowing the dog to investigate him at his own pace. "And you're Sophie. I understand you've discovered something special about how to work with exceptional dogs." Sophie nodded slightly, her serious expression unchanging, though she appeared to appreciate his indirect approach. Phantom understands more than people realize. He needs to know why things matter, not just what to do. The congressman nodded thoughtfully. That's true of most intelligent beings, isn't it? Purpose motivates more effectively than instruction alone. He straightened, addressing Maya. I'd be interested in seeing this approach in practice if you're prepared for a demonstration. Maya outlined the 3 scenarios she had arranged. A basic search and recovery demonstration, followed by advanced scent discrimination, and concluding with environmental navigation challenges that would showcase decision-making capabilities beyond simple command response. Throughout the 40-minute demonstration, Sophie and Phantom performed with remarkable precision and evident partnership. The congressman watched with increasing interest as the young handler provided context and purpose for each task, enabling the dog to apply his capabilities with understanding rather than merely following commands. Up next, you've got 2 more. Standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.